Welcome to Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And welcome back to another session of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Well, if you've been following the latest videos that I've been doing, well, I've sort of kind of branched off slightly from sort of kind of pure VMware to VMware really on ARM. I'll put this playlist in the description for you, so you can have a little look at some of the videos that we've already done on the VMware vSphere hypervisor, ESXi ARM 7 and 8, and issues with synchronous exception, and how to install on a Turing Pi open bench table, and how to install a heatsink. And I've still got lots of geekworm heatsinks here that I'm installing on a Turing Pi v2, this is one I made earlier. I think you can probably just see that there. That's one I made earlier. But anyway, what we're going to do today in this video, we're going to start from scratch with the Turing Pi v2, and you're probably thinking, start from scratch. How are we going to do that? Well, it's quite interesting, really, because one of these turned up. Anyway, we'll say no more about that. So we've got another one. They're breeding. We have another Turing Pi v2, version 2.4, in the lab, which I think is the version that was shipping out of the Kickstarter after they had the little battery issue. So v2.4 v2. That's version 2, version 2.5 of the board. Let's get that right, because version 2.5 is now shipping, which is subtly different. It's got a few more changes in it. So what we're going to do in this video today, the board is actually basically turned up with a very early firmware version, v1, and it looks a little bit like this, a little bit boring, a little bit simple. And before we start productionizing it, and I'm going to do a journey with the Turing Pi v2 in what I'm going to do with it. I've done little bits and pieces already with ESXi ARM, and that's really specific to Raspberry Pi 4, CM4s, or stock Raspberry Pi 4s. It doesn't matter. It's all applicable. But as I've got a fresh virgin Turing Pi v2 board that's stock, I thought, I know what, let's just show how I've prepared it for my experiments and my lab. So all I've done so far with the board is I've just taken it out the wrapping. I've taken it out the wrapping, I've connected a Pico ATX module to it, and I've plugged it into the power adapter. So I'm not using a Mini ITX power supply, because again, I might buy a black Mini ITX open bench table for this as well. So I've got twins, because I have been working on the other one. The other one is now got 4 CM4 modules, all installed with the ESXi ARM 8.03, which I have done videos on. I'll put those in the description as well. So we're going to do exactly the same thing with this, but I'm going to sort of kind of document, and I'm going to sort of kind of video every aspect of it. And I know I sort of kind of turned around and said that I'd got to 50 videos and I wasn't going to do any more videos this year because I wanted a break. Well, you know, I'm so enthusiastic about, you know, VMware and ARM and Raspberry Pis and Turing Pi and Uptime Industries and their Blade. You know, I thought, well, I know what, we'll maybe do these for Christmas. So first thing we need to do is to get the firmware. So the latest firmware as of this video is version 2.05, which in fact actually is almost 12 months old. And I have sort of kind of read on the Discords that there might be another version of this dropping soon, because it has been over 12 months since they've done it. So we've downloaded the firmware. And the next thing we need to do is effectively write that firmware to a micro SD card. And I'm using WinDisk 32 Disk Imager. It's a popular product to do. So I'm just going to check that I have actually got the right drive letter, which is I, so I don't actually write over anything important. And I've got the 2.05 image there, so I'm basically just going to select write, and I'm going to say yes, and I'm just going to let that basically write that image. Okay, good, right, successful. And I'm going to click cancel there because that's just Windows getting its knickers in the twisters and the standard partition type. So there's our firmware image actually basically written to an SD card. Now, the SD card slot is actually underneath the motherboard. And I think there have been a few comments that it's not really a very clever place to put it, especially if you've already mounted it in your case and you need to update firmware, because you're going to need to take the motherboard out, or you could use a micro SD extender. And I've got some of them here somewhere because I use them on the ESXi 7.0. Just looking to see if they're up here to show you. But I actually used them on the ESXi 7 project when it was corrupting issues, etc. So they aren't readily available. So I'm just going to eject the SD card from my machine, and I think it's I, so I'm going to eject that. That's all done. Don't really want to get any corruption. Okay, so that's ejected. So with that, I'm going to take the SD card. I've got it here. I'm just going to quickly pause this, and I'm going to go and put that in the motherboard, underneath the motherboard, and then we will basically carry on with the next piece that we need to do. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, I've changed the layout of the screen slightly so you can see what's on the screen. You can also see physically what's actually going to happen to the Turing Pi board. So I've actually installed the micro SD card. I have got a serial connection connected to the BMC UART output on the board. So this is a serial connection using PuTTY. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to type into this window, reboot. And we are told that the BMC that runs on the Turing Pi board runs full Linux. So I'm just going to do reboot. And the Turing Pi 2 board should detect the presence of the SD card, the micro SD card, which has got the new firmware, and it should ask us if we want to reboot. Now, at the moment, I haven't got any network cables or any USB cables. All I've got is power on via the Pico ATX, and obviously I have got 3 wires connected to the UART. So I'm just going to basically hit reboot. And hopefully we should actually start to see after it actually basically restarts. So it's actually basically starting to reboot now, and hopefully it will actually basically pop up, and it has done. It basically turns around and says, Turing, this utility will provide a fresh installation of the Turing Pi 2 BMC firmware. Note that this will erase all user data stored on the Turing Pi 2 BMC, thus restoring backup to factory defaults. Do not proceed unless you have first backed up any files. As I said, this is a virgin board, so it's not being used in production. If you wish to confirm the operation and proceed, either type confirm. Now, if you didn't actually basically had, as I said, I did this on the previous board and I did it the old-fashioned way. I actually basically put in the micro SD card, and as it says there, I pressed key 1 button on it 3 times in a row, and it basically will go through the firmware update procedure. One of the reasons I actually basically wanted to show you physically what's happening is because quite cleverly they use the LED outputs on the Ethernet connections to give you some sort of status. And if all goes Pete Tong, it flashes SOS on the on the Ethernet LEDs, which I thought was very funny. Hopefully we're not going to get an SOS today, so I'm going to basically just type confirm. If you didn't have a UART cable connected to those 3 pins, then you would basically just press key 1 on the motherboard. So this is just really showing you what the process does behind the scenes. So I'm going to type confirm, I'm going to hit enter, and that's obviously now going to start. You can actually basically see on the screen what it's actually basically doing. It's installing BMC firmware, it's scanning blocks, and you can actually basically see physically what's actually basically happening on the physical board as well. So it's installing BMC, it's programming blocks. So whilst that's happening, I'll chat. I've been quite successful so far with the Turing Pi and the CM4s and getting ESXi done. Anyway, so done. Please remove the micro SD card and reset the BMC. So I'm going to go and reset the I'm going to go and remove the micro SD card, and I'm going to go and reset the BMC. Just one moment. At this point, I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drop the power from the module. I'm going to give it 10 elephants. 1 elephant, 2 elephant, 3 elephant, 4 elephant, 5 elephant, 6 elephant, 7 elephant, 8 elephant, 9 elephant, 10 elephants. We'll give it a power up again. And okay, so now we will be running the latest firmware version, which is 2.0.5. And what I will do, I will connect the networking back in, and hopefully we'll connect back to the BMC interface, the web interface, and we can see if the interface has changed. So I'm just going to put this on pause, and it's now generating the new host keys, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So it's still booting. I've actually connected the network card, and as you can see, the camera wire was actually basically underneath the network card, so it's actually moved it. So I'm not quite sure whether or not we're going to be able to get that back. So I'll just turn that off. Okay, so yeah, it is documented that it does take a couple of minutes to generate the self-signed X509 certificates or the SSL certificates. I think 1 or 2 minutes, I think it actually basically states in the documentation first time. But in the next video, and you can actually basically see there that we're on the network, because I use something called Fing, which I think comes out the Landesk suite, I think. And it basically monitors the network here for any things that get turned on the network. So, okay, welcome to Turing Pi. And if we have a little look, the login is Turing. No, sorry, the login is root and the password is Turing. So we're now at the... Okay, so we've got an IP address of 141.245.136.60. Don't you just love it when things are Linux and you can just basically use Linux commands? So I'm going to go back to our config here. The IP address has changed, so I'm just going to type in 60. It does say it's on the network. Okay, so we've got a not secured SSL certificate response, but I'm going to log in anyway with the password, root, and Turing. And there you go. You can see that our Turing Pi has a nice new shiny interface. Now, the version of firmware that we were on, v1, couldn't be updated to v2 using the BMC interface. In the future, we will be able to upgrade the firmware basically using the GUI. But that does provide you with a recovery method. So if you really screw up your BMC, you can take your micro SD card again, and you can go through that procedure to totally wipe it out and start again. So there you go. That's all I was going to cover in this video in how you can recover or how you update your Turing Pi v2 firmware from v1 to, in this case, v2, which is specifically v2.05. So come back in the next video because I'm going to show you how to install your own SSL certificate from your own Microsoft certificate authority or certificate services server. So you don't have that horrible self-signed certificate which basically just causes your browser no end of issues, calling out and warning you and having to click advanced. And it's something that really that I spend a little bit of time doing at the moment in going round all the bits and pieces and changing that, because it is a complete pain in the ass. Anyway, so if you've liked this video, then please thumbs up, please subscribe. If you're watching this on Experts Exchange, then please endorse. If you don't like it and don't give a stuff about it and you don't like it, then give it a thumbs down. Anyway, come back soon and watch the next video in this series where we explore Turing Pi with VMware vSphere Hypervisor ESXi 8.03. So once again, thanks so much for watching, and good night and goodbye.